Hello, this is Gomez bringing to you the wisdom of the House of Knights. It's a special oracle cards based in the popular fantasy series by Kristin and PC Cast, The House of Night, about vampires and all kinds of growing challenges and other things besides. The deck has been designed by Colette Baron Reid, and it is slightly different than many because it has 50 cards instead of the traditional 78, so the ways of interpreting them would be a little bit different, and I will show you how to interpret them with associative logic without much knowledge of the series, based just on the titles or the visual images. I apply associative logic, which allows to deduce appropriate interpretations for each case. The deck comes with a nice booklet over here that covers most of the interpretations for each card already, but the ones I would suggest would be slightly different. Sometimes they would agree, sometimes they wouldn't. The back features the two authors, PC Cast. She is here cosplaying one of her own characters known as Siach, which was based on a mythological character that supposedly taught Colonna himself in Celtic mythology how to fight. And the other is Colette herself. And the booklet is pretty thick. It has 127 pages, and it covers each card. The illustrations for each card are clear enough to see, even though they may not come across as well in this video. And it has charming illustrations all throughout, nice font that's easy to see, so it is a very pleasant surprise to see a deck with a booklet instead of the little flimsy white booklet. This one has a nice one. I have tried several decks by Colette, and this one is another one that I would consider charming. They're all they seem to have that nice, kind tone to them, to their readings. It's kind of inspiring. When you're in a difficult situation, you want your healer, your advisor, to be friendly and understanding and be calm on one hand, but no nonsense on the other hand, where they provide the help, where they don't mince their words, and yet not being judgmental or mean. And that's, I feel, what this deck delivers amply through all of the cards. And the booklet has a similar tone. But without further ado, here's the first card, known as Fledgling. And some of you might know that in several role-playing universes, such as the Masquerade and other vampiric-based settings, the Fledgling, or even in novels based on them, the Fledgling is somebody who is just turned into a vampire, a very young vampire. So, although we have this glorified image of a vampire when they already became a vampire, it's interesting to imagine what it would be like to just be turned into a fledgling. And here's my thinking process about it, which is how the associative logic I mentioned earlier comes into play. Fledgling is somebody who is just turning. They are turned from human to a vampire, so they're in a period of transition for one hand. They are acquiring extra abilities, and sometimes they're not aware of what those abilities are, or of acquiring them, or of how to use them, but they're becoming stronger than regular humans. And they might be divided between what it was like in the past when they were still human and what it will be like in the future. They have the promise, the allure of the future. In this series, it is Zoe who has the promise of joining the House of Night, a new prestigious school. But in general, The booklet does suggest not always rely on the series itself, but view it more on the general basis, so that is how I am reviewing it, consistent with the principles of this booklet itself. And I'm thinking associatively and in general terms. So, again, Fledgling is somebody who is in the process of change, who does not know who they are going to end up being, what powers they will have, how to deal with becoming somebody else who they're not. It is not very different from the process of maturation, and that's why this card starts this deck in many ways. It is similar to the card of the Fool, with all the ramifications, the glory, the risks, the recklessness, the excitement, the optimism. And that's what this card Fledgling is about. Here we have next the card of the Warrior. And in the series by Kristin PC Cast, warriors are a caste that are supposed to protect the priestesses, basically. But just going by associative logic, warrior is somebody who is strong, who is steadfast. So what you can expect when this card comes up is some kind of a support if it's upright. You would be strong enough to persevere throughout whichever matter bothers you on one hand. You would have determination, and you would understand why you're doing what you're doing, why strength is required of you, how to offer support to somebody else when needed, or how to draw support from somebody else. All of this in the upright position, of course. In reverse, it might be a challenge of endurance, a challenge of strength that some people would find hard to overcome without extra help. So that is, again, associative logic in action. Card number 3 features the High Priestess of Earth. And of course all the typical associations of Earth: material, stable, growth of plants, motherhood, and other associations are available here because it is about Earth. In a reality, or rather in the fictional setting, the Priestess of the Earth was somebody that Zoe was familiar with, so it was one of her friends, but again we're trying to make a general setting here, general interpretation, just the way the booklet suggested we do. This card is followed by the High Priestess of Water, and again all the typical associations of water, such as flexibility or moodiness, a special insight, or a secret knowledge, or it could go into psychic, intuitive, emotional, feminine, receptive, resistant. All of those water associations, they're all present here as well through this card. The next card continues the theme of the element and introduces the element of fire. Here we have the High Priestess of Fire, card number 5. And again, typical associations for this element: passions, desire, strong will, hot temper as the opposite side, creativity that's very intense and immediately pressing, and all kinds of things like that with fire that are accessible through associations. Whatever you associate with fire, this card could represent. Then we have the High Priestess of the Air. Her colors are so striking that it's not as easy to show them all in their glory, but again, the air represents that element of thoughtful contemplation, and the opposite side being the airhead who cannot concentrate, cannot focus where they should, and all the other typical elements of the air are in this card. Then we even have a High Priestess of Spirit, and the human spirit, the sum total of all the other elements. Whatever is your training, I'm sure you have many associations for spirit, and this one would allow you to use them. Card number 8 is Vision, represented by the character Aphrodite. This is not the goddess Aphrodite, this is an earthly girl who became a vampire in the series and chose the name Aphrodite to honor her good friend that perished. Even though the booklet tells us not to rely on the series too much, this girl has too much of an interest in history that ties nicely with Vision not to mention it. Here the suggestion to interpret the card is Vision, and it's card number 8. Aphrodite, in a sense, this character was partially guilty of self-betrayal. She tried to do something nice, she tried to follow her calling, and when her calling did not work out through machinations of others, she gave up on it and became, instead, out of protection, defensiveness, a sort of a shallow representation of herself, just the visual, just the superficial of what it is like to be her. She lost her essence for a long while until the events in the book series forced her to regain the essence. And for those of you who followed, for example, the series Angel with Charisma Carpenter as what's her name? With Cordelia, who went from a superficial character to a very deep, very willing to sacrifice, intense character. That would be what Aphrodite was like as well. And that's what the card is about. It's seeing, of course, what is beneath the surface, seeing into the depths. That kind of a side that is not easy, that could cause difficulties, that would make you maybe reconsider. Maybe I shouldn't be seeing all the truth. It's too painful, too dark. How I'm going to deal with it, handle it. So this is what Aphrodite is about. She features all of those elements. She is supposed to represent beauty through her name. She craves beauty. She becomes the superficial element of it for a little while, and then she gains the essential part of it as well. The next card is Chaos, represented by this big whirlwind, tornado. So Chaos, in associative logic, you can think about it as something that disrupts the natural order. The deeper conclusion could be that it is the order that I plan. My plans are going awry, something is not working out. The booklet here suggests that it could be somebody else's mess and you have to clean it up, so you should step out of the way, and that's appropriate too. So chaos could be caused by somebody else, chaos could be caused by yourself. You can be seeing chaos where none is due, you can rearrange your own order if need be, but then sometimes you have to retreat from the chaos to recover, to plan ahead, to start anew. So chaos has all of those elements, and you can see here the visual element of disruption. So emotionally it would be experienced as disruption, but practically and psychologically it could even be helpful because it stops maybe something that does not need to keep on going, like a bad habit, a bad relationship, a bad career choice. Sometimes you're saved from it by a sudden disruption, outside factors. You can resent them, they're outside of your control, that's unpleasant, but at the same time it could lead to something better. And all of those nice and unpleasant elements, they're all embedded in this card called Chaos. And that was card number 9, followed by card number 10, that is Love. And love is very complicated in this universe. It requires, in the fictional setting of the House of Night Vampires, sacrifices, determination, loyalty, communication. It's one of the deepest overlaying themes of the entire series, and for that, all of those elements would be present in this card. All the sacrifices that love requires of you, all the willingness to work for it, to fight for it when it's really hard and you really don't want to, you want to give up, all of that is in this card, Love. And then we have this card called Complicated, and this to a degree also represents the past of Zoe Redbird herself, the protagonist of the series, but it could represent a particular situation where there is not just one truth but several truths, where if you have several choices, all of them have certain difficulties and they all have to be taken into account. That's how I would interpret this rewritten image of the moon. The moon is always in the background because overall there's the goddess of the night, Nyx, here in the series, the sacred patron of this oracle deck, and she is represented by this moon. Card number 12 is called Conclusion. And it features two books, chapter 1 and the end appropriately. So as such, it represents symmetry. It represents also that one thing ends, the other thing begins, like, you know, those cliches about door closing, window opening. They happen to be true for this card. So new beginnings, new endings, new chances, new opportunities, and a completion of the process before. All of those are here. Then we have card number 13 is Salmon, and summonings, as could be expected, they are in a sense a double-edged sword. It's you exerting your power, but it's also you dealing with something else from the outside, so you have to know what you're doing. You assume that you're using magic for something beneficial, which is always great. And if your intention is true, then the summoning will have good results and the card will be upright. In practical terms, it could be a concept, an idea that you are trying to implement, and it could work out well for you if the idea is well planned and is actually beneficial for your path, or it could go awry, as happens sometimes in this fictional universe and in real life as well. Card number 14 is called Denial, and the visual image of it is the hand reaching for the fruit. So it's that kind of a thing where you reach for a goal, it looks really appealing, and it is denied. And the reasons for it could be multiple. Maybe it's a goal that is not serving you, so you're denied for your own good. Maybe it's just a nonsense excuse and you're supposed to reach for it in other, more creative ways. And all of those factors have to be considered by themselves and see which one applies more. Did you have earlier signs that this goal is out of your reach, or did you have good confirming signs that this would actually serve you well? Do you need to experience it? Do you need to retreat from it? The book brings some examples of girls that were told that their boyfriends were bad and didn't listen, and their relationship did not work out. So all of those elements can be, it's like, why is that goal being denied? Is it just a sheer act of brutality to frustrate you, to help you? Is there something you can do about it, should do about it? All of those questions could be asked in a reading when this card comes out. And those are the associations I have based on just the visual image. And that's how you can analyze the next card as well, where it shows, it's called Fragment. And it does show a fragment of somebody, you don't know who that is, but in the fictional universe of the House of Night, that is probably a fragment of the protagonist, Zoe Redbird, because she got fragmented. Her difficulties pulled her aside from herself, made her separate, made her want different things, different boys even. And all of those things are encapsulated in the card Fragment. Fragment shows that you are probably divided, that you don't have all of the truth, so a synthetic analysis might be required because you're only seeing part of the picture, a single element of it without seeing the others, and the others might just be important because, as the saying goes, wholeness is always better than the sum of the parts and such. So this is all of those associations come about in the card Fragment. The next card, card number 16, is called Invisible. And the associations for invisibility are multiple. On one hand, invisibility allows you to escape responsibility from previous actions. So you can be invisible to the harm that could otherwise befall you. That's the positive aspect. The dangerous one is where you feel yourself to be invisible to others. No matter what you do, you strive so hard, you put out your best effort, your best work, and nobody sees it. That could be very disappointing. So then the natural questions would be to ask, what causes that invisibility? Am I seeing myself the right way? Do I expect others to see me where I don't? Do I expect my partner to see me where I don't? Do I need to be visible? Maybe there are some dangers of being visible that I didn't enjoy in the past and I'm afraid of experiencing again. There are so many ramifications to each of those cards. All of those questions need to be considered carefully. And this one would be clarified by the surrounding cards, what the overall meaning of it is. Appropriately for card number 17, Focus, we have an archer, because archers are focused on the goal. And of course, the right kind of focus is very helpful. If you surround yourself by what serves you, by what you really want to achieve, and take away all the distractions. The distractions could be represented by something even pleasant, such as a favorite TV show, a hobby that spends a lot of your time and doesn't get you results that are satisfactory, something that makes you angry. All of those things could and should be out of focus when it's the ultimate goal, what you need to do and how you do it, that needs to count. And for that reason, the archer image is very appropriate. Sagittarius in astrology, archer in mythology, they're always goal-oriented and they go towards their goal no matter what. Well, this is one lovely setting. One can understand the allure of it despite it being forbidden. This is card number 18 that we're dealing with, the forbidden card. The book interprets it as some things are forbidden for your own protection, and that's true. I would like to offer some more associations that I have acquired with this word and this card. And the associations are that sometimes you do need to stay away from the forbidden, it's not what it seems. But sometimes you also need to experience it for yourself, to learn what it is like, to understand why it doesn't serve you, so that you're not drawn to it in the past, because it's kind of hard to keep being drawn to something that you're not supposed to have and not allowing yourself, suppressing that desire. That is something that we covered also in our Fretfully Brilliant show discussing Jekyll and Hyde. So forbidden could have all of those elements, and sometimes you can also find out if it is forbidden for an entirely unnecessary reason. Somebody decided it would be bad for you, and actually you happen to be the exception, and it works really well for you. So it's always good to not go just, it's forbidden and I'm going to quit, but why is it forbidden? What would happen if it is not forbidden? How would I interact with it? Can I make the best of it? Should I stay away from it? Would it serve me? Would it not? All kinds of interesting questions, and all of them are about this lovely door that I would be allured by as well. And then we have card number 19, Wishing. We see here a girl sitting over the well. And wishing, of course, has also several possibilities. Wishing for something that is good for you, wishing for something that is not. Hopeful, hopelessness, all kinds of associations based on upright, reverse position. Even sometimes making a wish for something that would not come through is still kind of inspiring. So all of those elements in the wishing card. Appropriately, wishing is followed by the card of fulfillment, card number 20. And fulfillment follows wishing as a natural result, as a cause and effect. And if they show up together in a three card layout, that could be significant because it would show the connection between what you're asking for and how it is going to materialize. So that's very interesting that they even follow each other numerically. Number 21 is a grove, which could represent the need to recharge, to rest, to isolate yourself like a hermit, to learn new things, or to learn to appreciate the things that you didn't, to take the time out, to get closer to being yourself, surrounded by the majesty of nature. Letting go is a good counterbalance to some of the earlier cards. Sometimes when wishing doesn't work out, when the goals are not met, when the forbidden holds you back, that is the time to let go, to understand why this is happening, why you should or should not strive harder or in different ways. Take the time out to prepare better and start all over again. It's a pleasant, relaxing card, as one would expect from letting go. Card number 23 is dedicated to Kramisha. She was the prophetess in the series. And the card itself is called Listening. And that could be interpreted as listening to your inner voice. Kramisha was a prophet and she spoke in verses and poems. And if you had a biased opinion against it, since it doesn't make sense to the rationale, you could say, well, maybe she's creative, but how is one to trust something that comes so in such a strange form, in garbled way? So that is how it happens too in real life too, when your inner voice is telling you something and you begin to doubt it because it's not coming out in the form that you expected it to. It's telling you to do something but without a good reason. What would you do? Would you take it as a natural thing to just go ahead and do it, or as an equally natural thing not to do it? Listening in the upright would mean that you should listen to your gut feeling. Listening in the reverse could mean that you are listening to their own voice, possibly the voice of your past, that many people confuse their past experiences with their instincts. They come from similar places but still have a distance apart. As card number 24, we have this charming representation of lust. And in the series The House of Night, there was the Society of Vampires that were basically on top, and they were female, and the Society of Warriors that were their servants and friends and allies, and they are in a somewhat subservient relationship. And it can be seen here that this is in a sense out of balance. One partner, the female one, is dictating the terms. So this card, aside from its physical connotations, which could be true if supported by other cards, that it's about a physical relationship, on the mental level they could show that one partner, and it doesn't matter which one, male or female, but a particular partner in the relationship is dominating that relationship, is demanding more than the subservient partner is willing to give sometimes, or sometimes they are willing to give it, but they don't understand what they're giving. So again, all of those elements to discuss in this card. And meditation is the next card. The associative logic could suggest that it is taking a time out to think carefully, to make the time to consider carefully before making a decision, to recover, to recharge, and other pleasant ideas. The imagery of the water here is relaxing, the hands holding together, showing peace with themselves, so it is generally a positive card for all purposes. Honesty here is represented by a beautiful candle, and honesty has several associations. Symbolically, it could be interesting to inquire if honesty is required, if honesty is the best course of action, if we are seeing all of the picture to be truthful about it, or we are only saying our truths, if it should be clarified that we're saying our truth or just state things as they are. And also a relationship with yourself. Are you being honest with yourself? Are you communicating what your wishes truly are to yourself, or are you trying to protect yourself from hurt and for that reason trying to say something else and not being completely honest with yourself without even being intentionally dishonest? So honesty can also be very subtle, and all of those associations would help. And the next card is Hope, represented by the forest and the moon. And this card is in a sense positive. Some danger of it is that some hopes are false. They're based on unrealistic expectations, on the idea that if I hope for this, it is because this would make it easier for me if this were to happen. And it doesn't mean that I know how to deal when my hope doesn't come true. So if you know how to deal when your hope is frustrated, if you understand that it might not come true, then hope could be inspiring, especially if it's based on something realistic, if you did some work to make it come true. And it's a very striking image of the moon coming through the trees representing the possible difficulties, and the moon the possible inspiration drawn despite the difficulties. The next card, number 28, is called Reminder. The writing here in the background that you might not be able to see is Don't Forget. Many of these remembrances and fragments and everything, it's about personal development. It's about remembering yourself, remembering who you are, remembering your true purposes, not to let yourself be distracted from what they are, and just being yourself. Although the just is somewhat ironic because most people don't know how to just be themselves. It's not really a just, it's a big thing, and that's why there is a special card for it, to remind you that you are as good as you are. The horse on card number 29 represents movement, of course. And I would also add that since there are rocks on which the horse is standing amidst water, that the horse is representing the balancing effect of overcoming emotions, overcoming obstacles that seem to drown you in their futility. The horse is as optimistic as the hope has been in its own way. It gives you practical tools to overcome. So this card is another positive one in its upright position. The next card is Rigid, and the regular associations for it: lack of flexibility, inability to move on. To a degree, if it's positive, it could connote elements of conservatism that allow you to make extra money or succeed by doing the same thing again and again that worked. So being a consistent strategist, this card could apply to good engineers and financial experts. They would benefit the most out of it. So I would consider this card to relate to financial matters when applicable. But in its negative elements, in the psychological, emotional development, that would of course be for stagnation, for not being able to change with the tides, for not adjusting to the circumstances. And it is ironic that this image is represented by the raven, because the raven is known to be the most adjustable of many birds. It can learn new tricks, it can improve itself, it can learn to think in new ways and imitate what others are doing that succeed. So all the better characteristics of the raven, its adaptability and such, can be found in this card as well in its positive elements. Card number 31 is called Risk. It is not very different from the idea of leap of faith. where we're trying things just because we have no means to measure how successful it would be. And sometimes it is good, especially to counteract the previous card that we've seen that was rigid. But financially, that could be instead the opposite and could be detrimental to a degree. If you're risking something and you don't have good instincts, you could mess yourself up. So those cards go nicely together, and they could show if you are well balanced, if you're consistent within yourself, or for example, if your desires go a different way, where you want both safety and at the same time new experiences, which could or could not contradict each other depending on the circumstances. Card number 32 is Self-Worth. And the different possible ramifications are obvious enough. The good aspects of self-worth are clear. The bad ones are only when it goes extreme, where self-worth is ruling over appreciation of friends or duties or anything else, where it makes you unreasonable and arrogant. That would be the reverse position, but otherwise self-worth should be pretty clear. The next card, number 33, is Loyalty, represented by another vampire girl, Stevie Ray. And in her case, loyalty was very interesting. She wasn't really blindly loyal per se, and that is relevant to the meaning of the card, of course, and the associations. She was loyal to those she appreciated, to those who gave her reasons to be loyal to. So loyalty has to be done the right way. It's loyal to those who are worthy of your loyalty, who prove themselves, or who you have instinct that could improve in the future. And Stevie Ray exhibited all of those properties. She never, even when somebody told her that her loyalty was misused, or if they did, she had something to go by. She had reasons to justify her loyalty, and not just by her emotions, but also by reasoning about her instincts, what they told her about the person she was loyal to. And significantly again, the next card is related to the previous one, but you would have to know the series to appreciate that element. Stevie Ray was loyal to this specific raven, or also known as the series as the Raven Mocker, Rephaim. And here the card's meaning is trapped, which is very interesting. It's a raven in a cage. What I would associate with is that he is trapped within a particular image of himself. In the fictional series The House of Nights, ravens were the antagonists. They represented a dark force, and Rephaim was at the forefront of it, the right hand of darkness, as it were. So he was trapped by doing the bad things. He was trapped in his own bad image of himself, that this is how things would progress, this is how it would continue, and there's no outing. And that's why he happens to be trapped. It's that the actions and the perception of others together combine to make him something. And it was Stevie Ray's loyalty that allowed him to escape that image, to become somebody else. So those two cards would interact in a reading in an interesting way. They would support each other and would show better ways to escape. If you're feeling stuck, as this raven is, if you're feeling in despair, the other card, the loyalty, will show where your help will come from. Card number 35 is Strength, and that's of course a good positive message of endurance. The danger of it is it becoming that rigidity we saw in a different card. It's that difference between the oak and the willow, which one is stronger. And the willow is supposed to bend with the wind, and for that reason it is more likely to survive, where the oak is supposedly, according to that saying, would fall. So it's the strength in fighting for what is right, in being flexible, in choosing how you fight, in choosing what methods you use, in being creative, in not just expecting the stubbornness being sufficient to succeed, but also thinking outside of the box, and being flexible mentally while persistent physically or emotionally. Card number 36, differences, is kind of ironic. It shows the differences through the image of the black and the white cat that are showing the contrast in a cute way. In the fictional series The House of Night, that difference was played out in a completely different contrast through the black and the white bull, and those would oppose each other, and one would represent evil forces and the other one would represent the good ones. So this contrast seemingly is diminished by reducing the black and white to the kittens, but it also makes it more playful in a sense. It makes it less serious and more likely to be positive. So the association with the different sky would be that you're seeing all perspectives, the black and the white and the gray shades, and the fact that the cats are facing or rather occupying a position very close to a particular fruit is promising. It shows that seeing all the aspects of the situation could be helpful. That could be the association from the visual and the naming elements of the card. The next card is Cycles, and this is of course neutral. It's just a fact that things move in cycles. Sometimes you go back to something you were doing before, sometimes you move forward, then go back again to events, to hobbies, to people, to places. So this could be a repetition of an old cycle. If it's a destructive cycle, the card would be negative. If it's a promising cycle, rekindling old passions, then the upright position would be prevalent. Card number 38 is Deceit. It is represented by the main antagonist of the series, the vampire called Noferet. And she was supposed to be in charge of mentoring all the fledglings we've seen earlier. She was supposed to be in charge of their school, of their studies, but she didn't only deceive them, which is part of the story, she also in a sense deceived herself into trying to replace her own goddess with something unworthy. So basically this card could symbolize self-deception. It could represent replacing true value with false one, with something that only looks appealing but has no merit at all. And it could represent misguiding others. This is in a sense the worst quality in this deck, the most dangerous card, Deception, because it's also psychological and so kind in a sense. Then Deception is the worst thing. It's allowing her to betray herself, to be at odds with herself, with her calling, with everything. So it's pretty drastic here if it's negative, and there would need to be some cards to modify it if the answer is more positive. Fortunately, the card that follows it is Success, which is always a good sign in its upright position. It shows alignment with the past, continuation of good results, success of strategy, planning, perseverance, and other good features. The next card, number 40, is Beauty, represented by beautiful flower with a thorn. So it shows that both of the elements are present, the true beauty and the reality within. So something that you think is beautiful would also have possible dangers represented by the thorn, but they would be overcome easily. And the beauty is real. You would benefit from the situation, need to strive forward and overcome the obstacles. instead of being deterred by them. So this is also a positive card. It is beauty as it really is, with its idealized and mundane version. They're both just as beautiful. The next card is Belonging, represented by the House of Night itself, a place where all vampires go to be home, and it is that home of your heart type of thing, where you feel you belong, where it can be your family but doesn't have to, it can be your friends but don't have to. It's a group of people who share your goals, who understand you to some degree. It's a place where you're meant to be, whether it's a physical or emotional location. It is a very reassuring image. The next card is Confidence. Here we get to see the author herself, PC Cass, the author of The House of Night. She is playing here the role of Siach, who was in the series itself a major mentor figure with great powers, even among vampires. But in reality, or mythological reality, she was also a mythological warrior who did own an island and taught Cahulan and some other Celtic heroes how to use their swords, possibly for different forms of magic and such. So she is a reassuring image. The fact that she is holding a horse here shows that she is in charge of her emotions, that she would not make unbalanced decisions. Confidence here is a guarantee of success. Understanding should be self-explanatory, but this card also has this nice visual image of arms spread out widely, which represents that it's a balanced understanding. It's not the kind of understanding, okay, I understand what you're saying about me. It's not the understanding that would let you be offended or hurt with yourself or others. It's the kind of understanding that also brings peace, which is most crucial. It is the useful kind of understanding. And an adorable kitten featured on card number 44, which is appropriately called Playful, and that is representing the attitude associatively that the querent or yourself must entertain, where don't take things too seriously, don't get attached to them, things come as they do, just enjoy the process while it lasts. And overall it also has positive connotations, no harm, just fun. The card Message is number 45, and that's just possibly an obvious association that news are coming your way, somebody's delivering them. It is neutral in its own right, but if it's reversed, your response to it might be negative. If it's upright, you would be happy and such. So again, just associative logic to its basic elements. Then we have this card of Colonna, one of the unwilling antagonists that went awry. He hasn't always made the best of choices, and for that reason he also represents choices. The choices here are highlighted by his wings. Notice this symbolic representation, black and white, and it is not to show positive or negative necessarily. It is that one choice would be right for him and one would not be, and he has been known to make bad decisions, and he was suffering for them. Basically, this card also represents attachment to particular results. In his case, he was attached to a certain result he really wanted to make true, and because of that he was misled, he was bound, he was guilty of self-deception in a sense, just like his ally of earlier, another antagonist we have seen, Noferet, in the card of Deception. Those cards would be related, so if they come both in your cast and both are reversed, they could symbolize that something is deceiving you. Maybe you're deceiving yourself, but you're making bad choices because of that. Individuality is represented by the protagonist, Zoe. This is card 47. Zoe was an interesting character. She was basically like the chosen one of that series, but ironically we didn't really get much sense of her individuality until much later on, where things started happening to her. She was always dependent on friends, so even before I saw the name of the card, I knew how I would interpret it associatively, that she would be the one representing the value of independence, of who you are without anybody else, of not being attached to your results, your abilities, your family, your gender, your race. She has been exceptional in many ways, but it is her struggles that finally made her who she was. Individuality is not the easiest thing to gain. It should be immediately obvious, but sometimes we have to struggle against conditioning. And this is to a degree what this card also represents. It represents the path of Zoe, Redbird, and of the rest of us as well. So she has succeeded in her past, so overall in a pride position this card would be positive, but she had some difficulties along the way, struggles to be herself, and those could be reflected in the reverse position. This card, Obedience number 48, is quite similar to the card of Justice that we see in typical decks of the Rider-Waite system. Here even the holder of the sword is blind, just like Justice is supposed to be, and the Waite, of course. So this card, despite being called Obedience, would also be considering the different elements. Should I obey this order? Should I follow this course of action? Would it be best for me? Would I learn something even if it's not good for me? Should I stop doing it and disobey instead? All of those elements would be important, measuring one benefit against the disadvantage, as was done in the fictional series itself. Similarly, card number 49 is called an oath, and it also has different elements like that. The oath is supposed to be binding, of course, but you have to understand what it is you're committing to. Are those the things that you bargained for? Are they exactly what you would want to be loyal to, or are the terms now redefined? Many people stay loyal to their oaths, to their promise, to their friends, and then they don't realize that the friends themselves change, the circumstances change, and there is some need for flexibility. So all of those elements are important, but this card could represent a particular aspect of dealing with the lawyer in the specifics. The booklet does not cover it, it's just my personal association and insight that I'm sharing with you. So that is an oath. And the last card is the beautiful black cat that Morticia and I call Scorcher because of how he looks, and there is a moon over him. That is a very good conclusion to the deck, and the moon itself in all of its glory, we saw its tantalizing element in the Hope card, and here it is more realized. So it is coming to one's power, it is seeing the full potential, going towards the goal. It would go nicely with the card Fulfillment and Success. They are related concepts here. Now, for the sake of completion, I would show you the back of the card. They're all similar on all the 50 cards. We see here the half moon, very charming black background with golden framework. This has been an interesting deck for me. I wasn't going to buy it originally, but because I thought, you know, I have so many decks, I don't want just another one. I'm done now. You probably saw my enormous tarot collection, and I have so many decks, I might as well open my own tarot store now. But a wise friend, Kelly, said that she wanted me to have this deck, and she was wise. I started getting into it. At first I thought, just by looking at it, that maybe it would be too fluffy for me, but then I realized that it wasn't at all. Again, it was that kind of an interesting balance where it had some ideas that were nicely put, but without any nonsense, without anything that some metaphysical circles are mocked for. So I really enjoyed that balance between strong, powerful and also nice. It was very good for me, and I think others would enjoy this deck as well. So this has been me, Gomez, teaching you how to use the associative logic through the example of this deck, The Wisdom of the House of Night by PC Cast and Colette Baron Reid. And here on the Jekyllhydeclub, the YouTube channel that you're watching now, we also have a playlist dedicated to tarot studies in general, that I have all kinds of different decks that you might enjoy, from typical to very, very different, from nice to dark to all kinds. So the playlist is called The Tarot Studies with Gomez, so if you enjoyed this video, you might enjoy the others as well, and I hope to see you next time.